Just like that, we are back. What's up, everybody? It is awesome to be in the virtual booth again with you. We've got some rad guests coming down the line for future episodes, but I just wanted to take a minute and thank you for your patience as we put as much as we possibly could on the shelf to take some time personally to welcome our son into the world and spend some time with family too. So everybody that sent over notes, kind words, messages via the internet or the mail, DoorDash cards. We even got a casserole, an amazing lasagna. So you know who you are. I won't name names. Thank you so much for that. It was really cool to be able to have all that roll in. It was just some great vibes. So thank you very much. This podcast, The Blade Dive, is presented by Prenoth. Very much appreciated all that they've done for support, and I've built some really cool relationships along the way. So humbled to have their support. So grateful they're on board. We've got a rad guest to get to, and that interview's coming right up with episode 35. But I actually have a guest right now. This has been the coolest part of this whole endeavor with having different resorts sponsor these episodes, because I get to meet mountain managers, directors, slopes managers, terrain park managers, and it's like an additional interview on top of the interview. So I get to know somebody else. I've really enjoyed it. So Sun Valley is the sponsor for episode 35. I'm grateful to have their support and the opportunity to chat with their mountain manager at Dollar Mountain, Corey Allen. And I've got him right now in the virtual booth, virtually, with me. Corey, what's up, man? Tell us what's going on with you.
Thanks a lot, Parker. It's awesome to be a part of your show here. We Sun Valley and myself are definitely appreciative of that chance. So over here at Dollar Mountain right now, we've got an opportunity for free groomer here at Dollar. That's a graveyard position. 5 nights a week. And the other big thing that we got going on is I've kind of been overseeing our terrain park operations for a year and maybe more than that. And we got a couple good seats to fill right there in the terrain park operator world. Definitely have a lead operator position, and then we have another seat there. So right now we're looking for 2 more to add to our team. Great opportunity. We've got about 7 or 8 parks here on Dollar, and then we have 3 parks over on Baldy on the Big Hill. So, you get to split your time between the 2.
Peter Colombo was actually a guest on the show, and one of the questions that I asked him was, the area, Ketchum. Ultimately, he was like, dude, rad town, rad people. Food is amazing. The vibe there is really cool, and incredible skiing. And those were the things that he was using to describe what it's like to kind of play there, be a part of the scene, but kind of transitioning to like being on the team and what it's like to contribute. In your opinion, how do you think that the successful candidate grows at Sun Valley? And if you can, give us some more detail on those jobs.
That was great to hear that Peter Colombo is still speaking highly of us. So he was awesome for us, and we still have a lot of love for him. We are a terrain park operation that, we love that skate park feel. We want our parks to be inclusive. We want everybody. We definitely want to have 1 or 2 linear jump lines for the big guys, but we want everybody to grab a part of this experience. So, we do have learning opportunities for growth and understanding that, but training, we have training in-house. We do have a fleet of, over here at Dollar, we run Prenoths. We got a Winch Cat, we got a Bison X, and a Bison. So we've got some good machines to learn and use.
It sounds like what you have is an overarching opportunity for people. If they're stoked on the parks, they can stay there. If they want to learn about free grooming and get into something that's hooked up or not, they can do that elsewhere on a different trail if they have an interest in doing that, snowmaking, etc. It sounds like you guys really have a team there that's genuinely interested in helping one another, and maybe that cross-pollinates with skill sets too.
It really does. For the 2nd year in a row, Ski Magazine just voted us again the readers' #1 ski area in the country.
Wow.
We're the got the #1 tag for grooming. We're super pumped on that. And we're firmly focused on the guest experience here. It is all about that, but it is also about the operator and the employees' experience too. We want them to be proud of who they are. We want them to be proud of what they turn out. And there's a good opportunity to be a part of the team, but there's also plenty of room to go and jump over on the big hill and jump in a winch. Different thing going on over there. Big steep hill, consistently steep. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity to be a part of an awesome team here.
Very cool. I think it's the $1 million question that everybody wants to know about. But what is it like living in or near a resort, and how's the commute?
Ketchum, Idaho, Sun Valley, Idaho, Haley, and Bellevue might just be 4 towns that make up one of the best ski town valleys in North America. I mean, right here in Ketchum, Idaho, where I live, within probably 15 minutes drive, we've got hundreds and hundreds of miles of hiking, biking. The fishing is world class here. Recreation opportunities year round are just right on your front doorstep. Galena Summit is literally a 20-minute drive from town. It's a backcountry mecca up there. The commute in the Wood River Valley is really benign. So if you lived in Bellevue, that's about 15 miles away. From Bellevue to River Run is about 15 miles. The elevation gain is only about 700 feet. It is essentially flat the whole way here.
Wow.
It's just an opportunity to be slow and steady and enjoy the ride in, because that's what it is every day.
Selfishly, that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is that ability to post shift clear your head, and then going to work clear your head. I've always appreciated that, even if it's a short drive. Doesn't matter. I always appreciate that.
Absolutely, me too. I mean, that's kind of the transition from home to work, and for me, it's a moment of relaxation when you got nothing going on, and very few kind of weather challenges between the Idaho Transportation Department taking care of the highway and a pretty flat drive the whole way. Just an opportunity to chill out and get pumped on your way to work.
If you couldn't live in Ketchum, say Ketchum wasn't possible, which of the other places would you choose first?
I would live in Haley. Haley is an amazing town. I don't know what the population is in Haley, but it's probably about 7,000 or 8,000. Very community-based, very homely orientated. You got some high schools, some middle schools, elementary schools down there. Haley would be an awesome second choice for me. I would move there in a heartbeat.
Really cool. I was curious, had to know. Another big question too, what is it like to work for you, Corey Allen, as a manager, as a boss? And I know this is a long-winded question, but what do you think are your best leadership attributes that you feel separate yourself and Dollar Mountain Sun Valley from all the other opportunities out there?
I'm kind of the guy. I'm all about my team. I am their biggest supporter. I'm all about empowering them. I think there's a lot of things that go along with that. I mean, every day is different. Every day presents differently. Experiences change on a day-to-day basis. So I pay attention to my guys and my girls, listen to them a lot. I think recognizing and appreciating those people, sometimes that's hard to do. We're just so trapped up in our worlds, and I show up in the morning and just get ready to go. But I do try and pay attention to myself and slow down and enjoy that ride. And I think listening to my team, appreciating them, providing opportunity, recognizing them. I think I don't really necessarily like to be seen as the boss. I definitely will put my foot down. Not a fan of hard conversations, but I challenge myself with having those with people, because I want to see them be the best, and I just want them to be happy. By putting all these things in my employees, the love, the support, the recognition, I think that helps. It definitely does help 1,000%. To be honest, I was kind of humbled at the end of last winter. I was voted on by my peers here at Sun Valley Company. I was nominated for the Manager of the Year, and eventually received the award for Manager of the Year. It was pretty humbling, but it was also really awesome because I got to put Dollar Mountain on the map. Dollar Mountain is this cool little mountain. We got 2 quads, 2 fixed grips, couple carpets, funky snowmaking system that does the job. But it's just really, really hard to compete with the big hill, because that place is just insane and special. But you know what? So are we. And I could not have got that award by having my groomers, having my terrain park people, my lifties, my mechanics, my guest services, all of these people. I empowered them, and they empowered me, and we're the best that Sun Valley has right now, and we're number one in this country right now. So, the more I think about that, it is still kind of humbling for sure, but it really pumps me up, and it definitely gets me fired up for this season. And we're in a little bit of a lull here before the weather comes, but we're about fired up and ready to do this thing again. So
having an opportunity to be at a resort begins with trust, and then from there, the training evolves, and the trajectory of the individual can go wherever it needs to based on who they want to be within a company. But at Sun Valley, how are you improving with your team, as you mentioned, upon the already in place operator training to better the experience and engage the employee?
Well, yeah, it definitely starts with your in-house training. We do have a lot of opportunity for crossover here. I'm looking for my terrain park guys to improve their skill sets within our park program and challenge themselves with, lots of opportunity for design and not freelancing, but definitely design and planning. And then crossing over to the Big Hill, there's lots of opportunities. There's many varied seats to fill over there. The winch program over there, we have three winches go out twice a night on Swing and Grave. So there's always opportunity for crossing over there. Interdepartmental in-house training, I think, is always fun, getting snowmakers, groomers, whoever on ski patrol rescue drills, any of those kind of things. But I think there is opportunity here, and if you earn it, we see it, we recognize it, and we promote it.
I guess what we should really ask is, where can people go and find these jobs, fill out applications, and get in touch with you or anybody else?
So it's really easy, sunvalley.com/jobs. And so if you scroll down to the mountain tab, you will see opportunities for terrain park groomer. And within that is just a simple application process. It'd be awesome if you could attach your resume. We are very proactive about reaching out to people. It would be less than 24 hours for you to get a reply from us. We're also looking for winch cat operators, experienced winch cat operators, and experienced groomers for Dollar and for Bald Mountain as well. So sunvalley.com/jobs.
Hey, well, I want to wrap it up by just saying thank you, because as you've just now found out, it takes a lot to do this. You got to carve out time. You've got to answer my questions, and it is a big ask. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to link up with me and talk about all things that are you and Dollar Mountain.
Yeah, thank you for supporting the industry, and thanks for having us.
You heard Corey. Head on over to the website, sunvalley.com/jobs. Fill out an app, talk to him, get with the crew at Dollar or Sun Valley. Okay, my guest today is Oren Tanzer, and if you have been living under a rock and don't know who Oren Tanzer is, well, I'm about to fill you in before we dive in. Oren has spent a lengthy career in we'll call it the action sports industry, working for multiple brands, but specifically spent time at Mountain High, and then quickly moved on to be the terrain park and marketing manager at Mammoth Unbound, and eventually was promoted to the director of youth action sports marketing for Mammoth Mountain. Nuts. Very cool. He moved on from there to go to Quicksilver and be the snow brand marketing manager. From there, he went on to Red Bull and was the national athlete marketing manager, and then went on to go further to another company, which everybody probably knows too, Volcom, and was the global snow marketing director. Currently, he is the president of Frankie Bird Inc., producing all kinds of events and things for large-scale clients like Red Bull. So I think he's got something up his sleeve with the heavy metal event that's coming back, so that'll be rad to see. Anyway, this man has definitely been in a machine, traveled the globe, done some rad stuff with companies, brands, and athletes, resorts alike, and it was just a real treat to have him on the podcast. So if you're at home right now, grab your favorite drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine anywhere in the world, turn up the volume.
Be good and give it the juice. Already.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to, really the continuation of the Blade Dive. I'm not sure I'm settled on the Season 2 name yet, but we're going to keep this thing rolling, and we are back in the virtual booth today. It's heavy on the other side of the virtual booth. I'm excited about today's guest. It is Oren Tanzer, and if you do not know who Oren Tanzer is, I'll just throw a couple names out there. Mammoth, Unbound, Red Bull, Volcom, Quicksilver, currently president of Frankie Bird Inc., making all things happen all over the globe, I still have to say. Oren, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Pumped to be here.
Well, I'm stoked to have you, and I know everybody else listening is as well, so I think we got a lot to talk about, but I also think it's going to be some fun topics of conversation. So, you know the deal. We kick this thing off typically with a special guest question. You cool with that?
Absolutely. I'm kind of wondering what it's going to be, but yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. Today's special guest question for you, Oren, right out of the gate, comes from nobody other than Mr. Travis Rice. So I will go ahead and play it for you now.
Hey, Parker. Pleasure to be on the Blade Dive. Real psyched on the opportunity to ask my good friend here, Oren Tanzer, a real question. You know, we've been on a lot of journeys together. You know, we worked together at Red Bull for a number of years. Quicksilver for a number of years, which he actually oversaw the North American Art of Flight tour, where we literally drove a bus around the country, did like 30 different premieres. It's kind of psycho. But anyways, appreciate your podcast. Thanks for having me on. And my question is, I wanted to get to the root of this. Like, let's be real, Blade Dive podcast. Let's talk about cats, park building. And 2001 Super Park, Mammoth. That was an amazing event. Still, to this day, I think the best super park setup. You built a lot of amazing features for that particular super park. And the session was real. It was 100 people out there. But one jump in particular, I felt was built like total crap. The angles, the physics, they really were not set up for success. You know what jump I'm talking about. I appreciate you building it. Definitely helped me get my start. But what was going through your head when you built that jump? Because that thing sucked.
That's hilarious. 2001. I was working actually at the time. Josh Chevet was running the parks at Mammoth, and I just moved there as a builder, and so Super Park comes along, and we built this insane setup. Obviously, there's a big group of us working on there, from some mainline groomers and the whole park crew, and we had this incredible hip on the left side that was they spent tons of time, and it was on the cover of that issue. It's this orange Snowboarder magazine cover, and so obviously this incredible hip. But the one jump that got probably all of this attention, because the one and only Travis Rice comes along and does a gigantic backside rodeo, was this hip that last minute Chevet was like, hey, let's put a hip. There was kind of a little dead spot on the right, and he was like, yeah, let's just build another hip on the right. So we start stacking it up, and we build this jump, and it was kind of a last minute thing. It wasn't it was really never meant to go end to end. It was meant to just kind of hip to the left, and this young kid that people were just kind of starting to talk about. Nobody really knew who he was. There's all these rumors if he was even really invited, or if he just kind of showed up on his own. He was a rep rider, I think, for Rosenal back then. And Travis comes and does this insane end-to-end back rodeo, and that's kind of obviously Travis was on his path to this incredible career and all the things that he's accomplished. But that was kind of when people took notice and got Super Park standout and multiple pages in the magazine from that. So yeah, it was a pretty crappy jump, and it took the best snowboarder in the world to make it look good. So thanks for that, Trav.
That hip was that Super Park, but then which Super Park was it that Candide blasted, pretty much kind of similar scenario. Was it the following year? I couldn't remember if that was the same year. I was going to ask you that.
The 2001 Super Park was, we had built this one on the left side over by Chair 5, Solitude area. And so, yeah, we built one on the left, and then this was in 2001, we built that other hip on the right. But Candide, that was the next year. And we built this kind of double-sided hip right in the middle of Solitude there off of Chair 5. And yeah, Candide did this most incredible, like, end-to-end over this thing that just was not made to go end-to-end. And he must have been 100 foot in the air. It was like one of the most incredible things. But so, yeah, we were hip building machines back then.
But that was, so the Travis Rice's hip that he went 112 feet on, that was initially meant to be a hip. It wasn't meant to go end to end on it. He just fucking sent it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was never meant to go end to end. It was just because we'd already had a hip on the left side of the run, kind of like hipping to the right. And like I said, Josh Chevet just kind of last minute was like, hey, let's just, got this little dead zone over there. Let's just fill it in. Let's put a hip over there for the goofy footers. And next thing you know, Travis comes along and just goes bonkers on it.
Talking to Bridges the other day about it, and I said, man, I don't think there was a flop that year, but fill me in if there was. And
yeah,
he goes, no, I think everything was good. There was no, like everything was sick that year. And that was the year he was saying too that kind of things rotated feature to feature, right? It wasn't like a free-for-all. Was that correct?
Yeah, so that was the first year we built it over on that area of the mountain. So before that, we'd done it over on the backside by Chair 13 and 14, or Chair 14. And so this was our first year kind of moving it over to that kind of like new area, which anybody that's familiar with Mammoth, it's kind of steep up top. There were some challenges, but it was like this, having like a dedicated high-speed quad. Like at the time of these super parks, it was like, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but it was like to have this like giant section of the mountain with a chair that accessed it directly. And yeah, we built some pretty mega features that year.
Well, it was cool getting just some insight from Pat too, just discussing how things have evolved from one super park to the other or the next, and what was happening at Mammoth initially, and Travis's explosion onto the scene. And that same year, I think he was even given a chance to go and film with somebody after that, getting to stand out and doing that thing.
Yeah, I think he got invited to go film with Absinthe. And like I said, the rest, as they say, is history. But yeah, I remember like even after that, Travis just this like young kid and like I said, obviously like super talented, but I was friends with like the Rosenall rep, and I remember going to Shogun in Mammoth, the sushi restaurant with Travis, and he was probably maybe 18 or pretty young, and then and Dingo, who at the time was also like a rep rider, and I think Dingo was like 15 or something. And I remember going to Shogun and with those guys and this buddy of mine that worked for Rosenall, and like kind of like celebrating drinking a bunch of sake and stuff with like a 15 and 18-year-old. So that part wasn't good, but yeah, that's when those friendships started. And like Trav said, I've been really lucky, not just at Mammoth, but post Mammoth and my career. And so yeah, I'm really pumped that Trav was involved and sent in a question and in perfect Travis fashion made it a fun one.
Shout out to Travis for contributing to the podcast.
Yeah, no, stoked that he got involved and sent it in. So thanks, Trav.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, offline we were just chatting about kind of you and your reputation with how people know you. You travel around, you do the thing, people see you, maybe they know your face, and they say, "Oh, Oren," or you get introduced, or they introduce you, and "Oh, Oren, you're the Oren from Unbound, Mammoth," and that's kind of stuck. But prior to that even happening, you, as you mentioned, started out as a lift operator at Bear Mountain. Before you even met Keith Pfahler at Mountain High, but. There's even more to unpack prior to that. So maybe growing up as Oren Tanzer, however much you're willing to share, maybe paint that picture for us.
Yeah, of course. Well, actually, I'm born and raised in Canada, and so kind of snow was literally in my blood. and heading to the mountains. I was born in Calgary, and my dad was really big skier. My mom hated skiing; she would never go, but it was like an activity that me and my brother and my dad would do, and we'd drive out to Banff and ski. So my whole life, I kind of grew up skiing, and then remember discovering kind of snowboarding. The first time I went really, for real snowboarding was when I was about 14. So to fully date myself, that was about 1990. Before that, I'd moved from Calgary to the prairies to Winnipeg, Manitoba, which was not much of a part of the snowboard scene until more recently, because there's actually a couple of really incredible professional riders that have come out of Winnipeg recently. Jody Wozniacki and Jake Cusick are both from Winnipeg, which a lot of pride for me, because there's zero. It's dead flat. I mean, the only hill we had to even take our snowboard on was like literally like the riverbank that was by my house that was about 15 or 20 feet long, right? So, but I would always do these trips back to see my dad, and we'd spend a lot of time in the mountains. And then my dad had moved over to Vancouver, and so then our trip started to Whistler. And I was 14 years old, and I remember telling my dad, like, hey, I was already skateboarding and like in that scene, and back then, especially in a place like Vancouver where it's like rainy all winter, so you can't really skate unless it's indoors. All skateboarders just became snowboarders in the winter. Like there was no division between those two things. You weren't either a skateboarder or a snowboarder. You kind of skateboard when it was dry or in the summer and snowboard all winter. So I grabbed a snowboard. I remember going to Whistler for the first time, and there wasn't that many of us out there. This was 1990, but they had this like little park up there and a little half pipe and all this kind of stuff, and that's kind of when I fell in love with snowboarding. And when I finally moved to California, I was 18 years old, and for no real reason, I was working at a pizza shop in Vancouver, and the guy was opening a place in Venice Beach and asked me to come, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll go to California. I didn't know anybody here, never been here before, but so I just kind of picked up and moved. And the funny thing is, I'd never heard of Mammoth. I never heard of Big Bear. I didn't even know there was snow in California, and so I sold my snowboard and packed up my stuff and moved to Venice Beach and got a surfboard. And it wasn't until after about a year in Venice, I just went to go travel around the world surfing for almost 2 years. And, just full backpacker style with my surfboard and a backpack. Yeah, when I got back, I just was kind of I don't want to be in LA. And I'd heard of Big Bear, and at the time I was riding around on a street legal dirt bike kind of thing, and my buddy had this old Ford pickup truck, and so he was like, hey, why don't we trade? I'll give you my dirt bike, you give me your truck. And we traded. And this was 95, 96. And I drove up to Big Bear.
Wow.
Didn't know a soul up there. I just knew I wanted to get out of LA. And yeah, for the first, I applied for jobs at Bear and Summit, and I finally got hired as a lift operator at Bear Mountain. Like I said, I didn't know anybody, so I lived in the Motel 6 for the first week, and then met a couple other people from the crew, and was able to find a room, or and then so that's kind of how I got to in the snow industry. There was nothing before that. It was kind of on a whim. I just I'm gonna go check out Big Bear, and moved up there and became a lift op.
There's a lot of people that have, I wouldn't say similar stories, but the level of empathy is there with being able to somewhat put yourself in their shoes, and whether it's driving across country and you're going out west, or you're doing or going out on your own to be able to create whatever job or passion that you love the most and turn it into a career. So many stories like that. But dude, first of all, you traded your bike for a truck. I don't know if he got the better deal or you did.
Yeah.
And then
well, the truck kept breaking down, so I don't
shit.
know. But it got me there. But then I don't know whatever happened to that truck after that. But but it got me to Bear. So that was the
Yeah, no, well, hey, at least it got you there. Point A to point B. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So if it got you there,
yeah.
great. But I also too, like you mentioned this offline, like I had no idea that you ventured and spent some time just figuring out what the hell to do. And while you were doing that, you were staying in the Motel 6, trying to find a place to permanently land. But like fast forward into, you being on the lift up crew and doing your thing. And obviously everybody wants to excel at their job, right? So it's not like you had hands in pockets and you're just kicking the snow. You were probably passionate about what you were doing for responsibilities. But was being or becoming a part of the park crew at Bear, was that like pulling teeth? Did you have to know the password? What was the barrier of entry there, so to speak?
You know what? It was yeah, I was just going to work every day as a lift op, doing like the best job that I could do and taking it really seriously. And I think I must have been about 20 at the time, 19, 20. And yeah, I would see these guys like coming around the lifts with their shovels and rakes and I was like, that's what I want to do. Like I went there to go snowboard, and every day off I had, I'd just be riding. And I think at the time, I don't know if I was like consciously like, hey, I want to be a professional snowboarder, but that was kind of like the goal, was to just like snowboard. And I guess that was what I was thinking in the back of my head. And so these guys would come around, and I just kind of became friends with the crew and with the park manager there at the time, which was, you'd mentioned earlier, Keith Pfahler. And so what happened was, every day off I had, I would just kind of go hang with those guys and volunteer. And back then, a lot of stuff was really done by hand. Like I remember hand digging a half pipe, which of course doesn't happen these days, but we didn't have a pipe cutter or anything like that. And so it was kind of like the more hands they had, the better. So if you were like eager, you could kind of get to work. And so that's kind of how it started. I just kind of like every day off that I had, I just go hang and volunteer and work and dig. And the end of that first year, it was the USASA Nationals were at Bear Mountain, and Keith it was end of the season, so he'd already laid off a handful of the park crew, but I was still around because I was this lift operator. So he just kind of said to me, he's like, hey, do you wanna give us a hand for the next week or two, whatever it was, with the USASA Nationals? So that was really how I got like my start in the park, was like helping out for nationals. And then of course the end of that year, and this is for the old timers out there, they'll remember. So Bear and Summit bought a drag behind pipe dragon and shared it between the resorts, so it kind of go back and forth. So we got that thing at the end of the year, and I remember having the passenger seat in the Cat was turned backwards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Keith would drive the Cat in a straight line, and I'd sit there in the passenger seat looking backwards, and with my one button basically to like move the machine in or out. And that's how we cut the pipe for nationals that year. And so that's kind of like how I got started in the park.
Dude, too cool. Like fast forwarding just to some technology, to relate a little bit. My first piece of communication for any kind of terrain park job offer was through MySpace with Jamie Cooper. And like that to me, you've got all these different platforms now. That's why I asked too, like, how did you get your start? And if you did get your start in a very, I don't know, not different, but it sounds like you took the initiative to make it happen. And whether the form of communication was face to face or if it was over the phone, or nowadays you've got LinkedIn, you've got websites, you've got email, you can stand out any way you want to. And, I've mentioned it before on several different episodes, but sometimes the best thing you can do is just go show face, take an interest, do your job well. And I think to most, those who work hard get rewarded. Yeah, absolutely.
I said that all the time with the crews over all the years, like, and kids would come ask me like, how did you get this job, or how'd you get to where you were? And yeah, I mean, literally it was like, there was no like real secret sauce besides just like working my butt off and of course a little bit of luck and being in the right place at the right time, but yeah, it was really like just being there, being a part of this crew, and like showing them that it was important to me. And and kind of just bugging them until they gave me a job, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, all right. So if we were to unpack it a bit more, and we'll kind of revisit how you got to Mammoth from Bear, but I wanted to just discuss one, and we're already kind of on it with just jobs and opportunities, but unpacking the career, at the time that I really positioned what you were doing, and I think others did as well, uh, as an elite role at Mammoth. I mean, you gave others a vision of what could become in the park world, and what you could become in the park world, what you could be as far as a manager or a director. And honestly, still to this day, the director tag isn't really followed by things like youth action sports or director of terrain parks, but just from memory, I don't know if I'm pretty sure he's advanced since the last couple of years, but I think Scott Cherry held it, or still holds the director of Unbound terrain parks. But you know,
Yeah.
how important was it to build a team of people in that department that could help catapult your career to whatever job title you were going to have?
Sure. Yeah. No, and it's interesting because it wasn't like it didn't just happen, right? It was like a cumulative thing over years. Um, I was so lucky that for almost my entire career at Mammoth, I worked for a woman named Pam Murphy, and Pam was not just like a boss, but she was like a parent figure to me. She was the one that told me to like sit up straight and listen and take. She was like the one that was really guiding me into becoming a better manager and a director. But yeah, when I first got to Mammoth, as I was saying earlier, I just got hired as a park builder. Um, and there's kind of a funny story about how I went from just being like working in the park to getting hired as a manager. But yeah, I started as a park manager. And it was kind of after a couple of years, because like a lot of resorts at the time, this was in the early 2000s, there was kind of the park, and there was park specific cat operators, but they worked under the grooming department.
Yeah.
There was always this like tug and pull between the grooming department and things like overtime or like hours or shifts and the park. But we had like a real specific, set of needs that we needed to accomplish. So I was kind of giving them direction on what I needed, and then they're kind of getting direction from the person that was signing their time cards and making sure they got paid, telling them something different. And a guy, he's become again like a father figure to me, and very close over the years, a guy named Clifford Mann, who anybody that knows anything about Mammoth would know Clifford. He's been there forever. But he was in charge of the cat crew back then, and he was a director. And I remember talking with Pam about it, and we were really trying to elevate the parks and kind of that youth culture at Mammoth. And Mammoth was one of those very early adopters of understanding that, yeah, you want families at your resort, but a family is made up of parents and kids, and the kids a lot of times dictate where they go for vacations, and all of these things, and how important that kind of like that demographic was. And so Pam was really going to bat for us, more than I probably even know. And there was these, at the time, these were some kind of old school guys that came up through, race department and ski racing and operations. And there's all these young kids like cowboying around with their snowcats. And so in order to kind of like even the playing fields, um, I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably in around 2003 or so. Um, Pam changed my job title from manager to director, and put the snowcat operations and everything that had to do with the snowcats, the employees, the physical cats were under us. So all the capex on replacements and maintenance, everything fell under our budget. And so I've taken just this day crew, and now we were like a 24-hour a day operation. And at that time changed the job title from a manager to director. So what it did was it kind of showed all these old school operations guys, who, by the way, and I want to say this right now, have become some of the biggest and loudest and best champions for parks and what we were doing. But back then it was to show these guys like, hey, we're serious about it. and you're a direct, Clifford, you're a director. Well, Oren's a director too. So now you guys are on an even playing field. So that's kind of like how the director role kind of came up. And over the years beyond that, we kind of kept adding more and more layers to what that meant. And like you're getting to, but when I got to the end of my career at Mammoth, I was director of youth action sports marketing, which was my official title. And I handled all the marketing outside of the regular marketing department, although I worked along with them, and sponsorships and, college programs. And at one point, the snowboard team fell under me. And so, the junior team. So, we kind of like added on all these layers, over the years and until we kind of got to that role. But it definitely didn't start like that,
Yeah, well, there's gonna be a bunch of kids or a bunch of people out there right now going, okay, can we make that happen at my hill? No, that's not what we're trying to get to the. That's not what we're unpacking here. It's just what you said. Back in the day, terrain parks were historic already at Mammoth, and at a lot of places, including Mammoth, parks still kind of had to fight for themselves. I know working at June that Joe, I know that Eric Rosenwald, I know that Cooper did, and that's just the nature of the beast. I respect their efforts, but that was all over the country too. So, and I guess that's my 2 cents is where for you to be able to hold a title like that, really, I think in the long run helped out the vision of what was possible for people in positions of power at the GM level, at the director level, at the marketing level to say, okay, hey, if we can position parks in a way that's going to even the playing field, as you mentioned, if we can position parks and its manager or the manager in a position to where they feel like they can be involved, have intelligent conversations, advocate for a capex budget, and piece together a program that people want to be a part of, then man, that's a brand that we can build. So I think, this is again like my 2 cents. That was where I saw that job title really help the industry. There are probably maybe some people listening that don't feel that way, but I feel that way because now, now we have people at the corporate umbrella level that have that job title, and that's massive, dude. Like that's big.
Yeah, I mean, kind of before, like I said, when I was at Bear Mountain, I remember the risk manager, and I won't name names, but this was in the mid to late 90s, telling us we would never have rails on the mountain.
Wow.
Right. So we were like the redheaded stepchildren. Sorry to the redheaded out
That's
there.
all right.
But we were like, and we were taking it seriously. But in the early days, it wasn't we weren't always taken seriously, right? And it was just we were the new kids on the block. And up until then, or I should say before, it was kind of like the race departments at these resorts were kind of, filled those areas, and all of a sudden we're like the new young guys, and it's like, what? Yeah, like I don't blame anybody for it, but people were just apprehensive about it. And it's like, what, kids? Why are we spending so much money on kids?
Yeah.
And it was the like understanding, but from the very top at Mammoth. I mean, when I first got there, Dave McCoy was still around, and Rusty Gregory was the CEO. And like I said, I worked for Pam Murphy, and from them all the way down, they understood that this was like the future for a couple of reasons. One, the kids of today are the families of tomorrow, right? So think about it. Those kids, as I'm calling them, teenagers, young adults,
Yeah.
and in the early 2000s, they have families now, and so it's like they're the ones that are saying, hey, let's go to Mammoth. Like they have that connection to that mountain.
Yeah.
And like I also said, right? I mean, any of us that are parents know that probably 98% of the things we do, it's for our kids. And so when my kids say they want to go to Mammoth because they've had a great experience there, I'm going to take my kids to Mammoth. And so the leadership team at Mammoth really understood that, and they went to bat for us and helped really make it happen in those early years.
Yeah, well, I've got nothing but respect for my time that I spent there, and even having the opportunity to spend short minutes within the Unbound office. I was over at June, but I valued them. It was cool seeing all the covers all over the wall in the office, and having each employee who was the operator at the time, all those guys. But I do want to hit you with this because I think that what we're talking about now is fantastic, because if there's anything that I think anybody can take away from listening to you talk about where you've come from and where you are now, it's not that it was just, I've mentioned you before as somebody that can flick the switch and make something happen, kind of like the Jimmy Fallon of the movie Almost Famous, not getting billed for the
Yeah.
ice underneath the underneath the basketball floor. But you're also, you put in your hard work, you put in your time, but you're also a person just like anybody else outside of what you do and what you have done. And everybody always, and it's a tough question, but what do you think defines you as a person outside of the board sports world, moto, marketing, your job? And then what would be your dream job if you're not doing what you're doing right now?
Jeez, yeah, those are kind of tough. Uh, as far as like my life these days, I have two kids, 6 and 8, and it's so funny. They've like, and I know it's so cliche to say like my kids, but they really like in the last few years, because they're both on the ski and snowboard team now at Mammoth, and so I spend a ton of time going up there with them. But they've totally like reignited this fire for snowboarding and being in the mountains. And it's so funny, like I don't need a powder day, like just cruising around the mountain with my kids. And so that's kind of, I mean, like I said, it's a bit cliche, but it's like really like my main motivation in life these days is being like a rad dad, doing all this fun stuff with my kids. And dream job, it's interesting. I'm kind of doing we talked a bit about my career post Mammoth and some of the places that I was, and they were all incredible. But they all kind of, they had good bits and bad bits, right? Like every job does. I went through like a big, like in around 2016 or 2017, I went through like this like deep dive internally of like, what do I want to do kind of thing. And it was interesting because I love ideation. I love coming up with ideas and figuring things out from the start. I've always had a hard time like selling ideas into like my bosses, like building decks and trying to sell in ideas. And probably because it's like you put this blood, sweat, and tears into like these ideas and really like thoughtful, and then bosses will be like, yeah, or nope, we're not going to do that. And it's like, yeah, but this is a great idea. And then past that is like this idea of like, okay, you got an idea greenlit. Now we got to figure out how to make it happen. And that's where I've kind of like picked up in my career these days in production, and like the creativity around trying to figure out how to like do these crazy events or photo shoots, and so by removing those first two steps in the process and starting at step 3, I've eliminated like my like the things that were causing me the like headaches and problems. And so I'm really doing like what I love to do these days, which is taking these ideas and like bring them all the way to fruition, which is like, that's what I love. Like, I think that's why I really loved working in the parks and building parks all those years. Is it's not just a concept on a paper or in a sandbox. It's like it starts there, but then it ends with like something physical that you can see and touch and feel and look at. And I take a lot of pride in that. So I'm pretty pumped these days.
Nice. No, hey man, that's pretty well said. Do you think your kids have appreciated kind of tagging along for some of those dream job opportunities if they've been able to do that?
Sometimes, it's so funny because yeah, my kids get an opportunity. Like a story I tell people all the time, like Travis, going back to Travis, he was staying at my house, I think in Newport, or he came by to visit anyways, and he had like a early cut of, I guess it must have been the 4th phase, and he sat down with Jax, and I think Jax was probably like 3 or 4 at the time, and put his computer there and put his headphones on Jax, and Jax is watching the 4th phase kind of before anybody even gets to see the thing.
Wow.
Travis is explaining it to him, and I'm like, Jax has no clue. To him, it's just like Uncle Travis is over at the house, and so yeah, my kids, they get to do some pretty cool things and meet some pretty cool people, and I think to them it's just kind of like, these are just their uncles and aunts out there, and I don't know if they even really know who it is,
Well, speaking of stories, I do have another special guest question for you. It's from Billy Anderson.
Ah,
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and play that one for you now. Here we go.
cool.
Hello, Blade Dive. Billy Anderson here with a quick question for Oren Tanzer. Oren, I know you were at Mammoth for a long time. We did a lot of cool stuff, from peanut butter rail jams, super park builds. I always loved sitting side by side with you and the cat. But the question I had for you was an off-hours question. I think something happened with Ryan Boys and Tara Dequitas in her huge truck. I'm not sure how the story goes. I haven't heard firsthand, so maybe you could tell the listeners what happened that evening. Hope all is well. Thanks for having me. Take care.
I'm like almost crying. I'm laughing.
Well, when he sent me that, I was like, "Yep, excited again to hear this one."
Jeez, I don't know how deep I should go with this one. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But yeah, it was funny. I got a phone call, and so yeah, Tara was a great friend and a Mammoth team rider in the early days. And yeah, she always drove these gigantic pickup trucks. So anyways, I got a call. I was at home, and somebody called. No, actually, Sarah called me. That's right, or boys, and they said, "Hey, we need your help. We got stuck." And I'm like, "Okay," and they're like, "You need to go like get a cat. Like you need to come and rescue us." So I'm like, "All right." So I'm in bed. Like I can't even remember. It was late, if not very early in the morning. And so I drive over to the garage. I grab a cat. I grab some chains and all this stuff. And I start driving. I get over by Main Lodge and I see some tire tracks on the snow. So I just start following these tire tracks, and these tracks are going like everywhere.
Holy!
I mean, it was like all around the bottom of Discovery Chair 11 and 1 and up to like the bottom of Fascination, and everything's already been groomed. And so for people that obviously in this industry, like particularly those mainline groomers, they take a lot of pride in having those nice straight lines. So I'm like zigzagging my way around the whole mountain trying to cover up these tire tracks. And then so I follow them all around kind of Discovery, Sesame Street, like the base of the mountain, and then I just keep going and going. And now I'm up by Minaret Vista, and then like going down the road towards Red's Meadow. So yeah, so I get all the way down there, and there's Tara's truck, and they'd made it that whole way, and then they just got off on the side of the where it was kind of packed down, and yeah, I had to pull them out and pull them the whole way back, and like I said, I'm not going to name names, but there might have been some making out in the back of the truck, and it wasn't me. And but yeah, Boyce was there, Tara, and some other people. So yeah, I'll leave it at that to save everybody involved. But
Oh man,
that's hilarious. It's funny. I mean, obviously, I remember it really well, and it was like one of those funny things over the years. But I hadn't thought of that story in a long time. So yeah, thanks, Billy. And man, we did. Volcom was we were so connected to the brand at the mountain, not officially through sponsorship, but because of Billy. And Jeff was a great friend of mine before he passed, and Billy's been one of my best friends for this whole time. I mean, I probably spent about 10 Thanksgivings in a row with him and his family. Like they really took me in and included me in their family. So yeah, I love that guy. He's awesome. So thanks, Billy.
Yeah, very cool. Stoked that Billy contributed. The only time I've ever seen a vehicle on the snow with something like that was at the base of I can't remember which chair it was at Threadbow, but I think it was over at Friday Flats, which is kind of like similar area to what you're describing at Mammoth. Anybody that's been up to Mammoth, that Main Lodge area. There was another operator friend of ours who, oh man, I can't remember his name. He's gonna kill me. I can fix this in post, but no, Nick Roper ended up like stealing the car from the parking lot, towing it up to the park, and then building a feature. It was a pole jam that he put the car on the deck, and the pole jam was in front of it, and then so you tricked off the pole jam to jump over this car. Brad was the guy's name. There we go. And he's rolling through the park setting up his day, and sees his car in the park. It's pretty funny.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, there's for sure some juicy parts to that story that I'm gonna refrain from to save the people involved. But yeah, people can use their imagination. It was a pretty funny night.
Well, another thing I was, obviously, Mammoth was majority of, well, let's not say majority, let's say a lot. You spent a lot of time there, and one of the coolest things, and we mentioned it offline, just discussing some stuff, was the West Coast Invitational, being on snow, being in the village, which it began originally on snow at Main Lodge in the village, correct?
Yeah, it was like the very first year. Actually, the very, very first year, yeah, it was just like in the park. And it was just like a thing for us, springtime, way to just kind of like animate the mountain and do something. It was actually, it was year 2. We kind of like custom built this course. It was on our riders ride at Broadway towards the bottom. And yeah, we partnered up with MacDog, who was making a movie about kind of like contests and stuff at the time. And so yeah, we kind of custom built this course, and that was year 1. And it was kind of after that it became like this specific scaffold built rail jam down in the village with all the bells and whistles. But yeah, year 1 was on snow at Main Lodge.
Crazy. And eventually it was like $10K cash prize, or maybe it was from day one. But what do you think your craziest memory or story, or maybe your favorite memory from WCI was, either in the village or on snow? Because it was pretty special, man. I mean, there were some heavy hitters there that came to that event.
It was special. And yeah, like I said, that year 1, it's funny to talk about the prizes. Like, we actually gave away on the first, that year with MacDog, when he was filming for Game Show, the grand prize was a 32-inch plasma TV, which at that time,
that was a big deal. Yeah,
that was a big deal. That was like a $5,000 thing. I don't think you can even get a plasma TV anymore. But and 32-inch was like massive.
Yeah, it was.
I remember giving that thing out, and it was like such a. But yeah, that first year, one of the coolest things was we had this young kid come along who was only about maybe like 7 or 8 at the time, maybe 9, was Tyler Flanagan. And he was just this like little phenom and hanging with all the boys and hitting all that stuff. But geez, it's kind of hard to pick out like a one specific moment, but it turned into these like incredible events with big, I mean, at the time, like, these big kind of cash prizes and this custom built scaffold and all the bells and whistles and concerts and yeah, it kind of like really turned into this incredible thing for many years. Like, it was a really cool event.
Well, and I bring that up because, just to name some riders, like Chaz Gouldemont won it one year, and then I remember didn't Lucas Magoon win it one year, and
I think Yale, Cousineau.
Yeah, Yale. God, I forgot Yale was even there. I mean,
yeah,
but to see, to meet people like Greg Bretz, and then see Greg compete with those guys, and that was kind of like the first click for me. It's like, oh, okay, these guys are all human beings. Yeah, they're professional athletes, but they're people beyond that. But it was really cool to see how everything flowed. It was, WCI in the village, and big partying scene there, and then you could ride the gondola up to what was that, Sunrise Lodge,
Canyon
Lodge. You ride the gondola to Canyon Lodge, and there was a concert up there. I mean, it was a trip, and it was happening in the middle of nowhere in Mammoth Lakes, California. So wild.
Yeah, it was totally bring up Greg. I mean, another one of those guys. I knew him his whole life. His dad worked on the lift maintenance crew, and he was on the junior snowboard team coming up, and he was just this little kid, and look at what he kind of went on to accomplish. But one thing that was always important to me was that these kind of local kids, or the kids that called Mammoth home, that we always included them in some of these like bigger contests and things that we were doing. Another well, these are all men now, but Trevor Jacob back in the day was another one, and in the early days of just this like incredibly talented snowboarder, and like you were saying, Greg and Tyler, and then we had all those big pros that decided to make Mammoth home, like all the Grenade guys, and Danny and all those guys, and back then Gabe and Jeff Anderson was back then on Grenade. So yeah, it was always important that the local kids at the time all kind of had a shot to like be included in these things.
I do think, before we get too far along, that we should do the push road question of the day.
All right, let's do it.
The push road question of the day.
That is right. The push road questions of the day. And today's push road questions are sponsored by Sun Valley. That's right. If you're looking for a job at Sun Valley, under Corey Allen at Dollar Mountain, pretty good place to check out would be their website. I will make sure it is in the show notes, but it is www.sunvalley.com/jobs. The push road questions are my favorite part of the show, so let's get into it. So I picked out four really good ones from four really rad people who I believe you know. So we're going to go with those. And your first question comes from Chris Zajac. And Chris wants to know, or have you elaborate on, what did we make the Snowboard Mag crew bring us for the LNP short bus photo shoot?
Yeah, no, it was a night shoot with Rome Snowboards, one of my best friends, Ryan Runke, and yeah, they were touring around on this like short bus, and they painted the whole thing, and yeah, we tugged it up to kind of the bottom of chair 11, discovery chair, like right in that little beginner zone, and built a little takeoff and landing, and again, we got a cover out of it.
Oh, no way.
LMP was there, and the Rome crew, and yeah, it was like late at night, and I think they brought us McDonald's to eat, or maybe.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe beer. I don't know.
Big Macs for everybody.
Yeah, that was a late one. We were out there for a while.
Crazy. Okay, so Jeff Pensiero has weighed in. For those listening that don't know Jeff, just think of bald face. Jeff wants to know why you have a sick piston bully belt buckle and he doesn't.
Well, there you go. See, there's man. Well, for starters, Jeff's one of I guess always one of my closest friends, and I spend a lot of time up in Nelson with Jeff, both summer fishing and winter up at the lodge. And got a trip this year, and I'll tell you, if you ever have a chance to go to Baldface, there's no other. It's like Disneyland for snowboarders and skiers. But yeah, Jeff's an incredible friend, and yeah, he's been pretty jealous of that belt buckle for a long time. Over the years, and we used to use cats that were just made for grooming trails, right? There really wasn't like park specific stuff, and then Piston Bully, who was a big, Mammoth was a big Piston Bully mountain, and they so the Piston Bully engineers were kind of taking notice of what we were doing, and I actually had a couple of trips over to Germany to meet, well, once to Germany to their headquarters and factory, and to meet with engineers, and then once we went over to France, Gerstner and I, and it was actually with Orage.
Oh yeah,
the clothing brand,
yeah,
to build some for those guys at a resort in France called La Plagne. And anyways, we get to the mountain, and they wouldn't let us drive the cats, and then so we're just sitting shotgun with these French guys. We don't speak any English, and I don't speak French, and so it was kind of tricky. And then all of a sudden, these couple of engineers from Piston Bully show up to the resort, and they're asking to speak to Oren. And these cat, like old school, French mountain cat operator guys are like, wait, why do they want to talk to you? And they send this like group of engineers to meet with us and sit with us and see what we're doing. And after that, they let us drive the cats. And they actually had a contest the next day in their wonky half pipe at this French resort, and I wasn't specifically a pipe builder, but I'd spent a lot of years.
Yeah, but you were like,
working
je m'appelle Oren Tanzer.
yeah. So they were like, it was pretty funny because they were like, after they like realized who Mike and I were and what we did, they're like, okay, you go fix the half pipe. So I like remember getting in this cat with the Zog and just like spending all night trying to straighten up this like crazy half pipe. And the next day, I mean, nothing that would have been to my standards, but the next day everybody shows up and they're like, this is incredible. And so
So
so yeah,
cool.
so we had a relationship with Piston Bully, both within the U.S. and our region, and also globally through Mammoth. And they, so yeah, at one point as a gift, it's a numbered belt buckle. So I got number 51 of 500. They only made 500 of these, and I don't know if anybody else at Mammoth even got one, but I got one of these belt buckles, and it's the belt buckle I wear every single day of my life, even 11 years after leaving the resort biz. It's on my jeans right now, and yeah, people are always coming up to me. They're like, "What is that?" I go, "That's a snowcat," and it's a fun little kind of conversation starter about my time at Mammoth.
Dude.
So sorry, Jeff, but maybe I can trade. Hey Jeff, how about I'll trade you my belt buckle for like a week up at the lodge, maybe?
Ooh.
Yeah, that would be a good trade.
I think he's proud. I don't know, man. I don't know. I would do it. I mean,
Wow, talking about the lodge, I went my first time actually. I worked for Mammoth at the time, and it was a snowboarder magazine trip, and it was incredible. And this is how Jeff and I became really good friends. Jeff is like, I mean, he's one of the smartest people that I know in business.
yeah, he's a G. He is.
He is, and so we did the snowboarder trip, and Bridges was there. I remember hanging with Peter Line and Chris Inglesman, and then there was a bunch of industry people that were invited, and so I was invited to go up there. And Baldface doesn't experience bad snow often, but this was, and I've been there, I don't know, 15 times, and I think this was the only time it was really not great snow, and everybody went out, and I stayed back at the lodge, and I built a park. Used the helipad, built a landing, and we built a hip over their Baldface sign, and a jib with, I think there was like a fridge, and so we built this whole park. And when everybody came back from riding, because it wasn't, I mean, even a bad day at Baldface is pretty darn good, but everybody came back, and it wasn't like those deep POW days that we're all used to up there. And they came back, and we had this incredible session on this park. And I think Jeff was just like so pumped that somebody was up there that could operate cats and understood kind of the operations, and it just kind of created this friendship for Jeff and I. Started back then, and there was a few other times I go up there when it was that neck deep incredible powder, and Jeff would be like, "Hey, pick up Oren and put me in a cat with a guy building a road," and I'd be like, "Yeah, but I want to go snowboard." And but anyway, so yeah, I'll be up there this year, so I'm pumped to get back up and spend some time at the lodge. It's people ask me my favorite places that I've traveled or been, and I've been around the world. I built a park in the Ukraine. I built these parks over in Europe and around the U.S. And my favorite place on earth is Nelson, British Columbia, and Baldface Lodge. So
shout out to Jeff.
Yeah, big shout out.
Yeah, I would love to meet him one day. I'm so grateful he's contributed to a couple episodes now, but yeah, really cool and awesome insight there too. I had no idea that you went and did that. It's like, hey, I'm going up here, but I'm gonna build a park for you because it's kind of a down day. Let's do it. Let's send it.
Yeah,
that's rad. That's awesome, man.
So,
Well, I've got a couple deep questions, deep blade dives.
okay.
First one is from, let's see, Barry Cairns has your next push road question, and he asks, what was the one thing in your career that you learned that helped to make the biggest difference?
Jeez, the one thing that I've learned. That's a bit of a tough one. And like I think I was saying earlier, like was really a cumulative thing over years. So, you know, that's a tough one. What's the one thing that I've learned?
That's a deep
Uh,
blade dive, yeah.
I know. Well, I mean, all the I hate to say it, but kind of the cliches that are true, like just kind of like working hard and like just busting my butt to be successful um but I guess like maybe the thing that's really helped me was just putting like really incredible people around me and trusting in them and trying not to micromanage and kind of probably the biggest thing is just like learning how to kind of set your ego aside and bring in all of that collaboration and that's how we were able to kind of create some of this most incredible stuff. It was not out of my head, it was just me getting out of the way. So maybe that's kind of something that I can look at, whether it was at Mammoth or in my career past Mammoth, of just kind of like learning that you can't do it all yourself, and you're only as good as your team. Or so yeah, I guess that's what I'd kind of say.
No, it's a hell of an answer. No wrong answer there at all. This one's rad. I really like this question. It's from Jordan Jacob.
Yeah, Jordan.
Jordan said he worked for you back in the day, and from his question, it sounds like he was humbled and honored to be a part of the team. So let's see. Jordan asks, or he says, "Hey, Orton!" Exclamation point, by the way. There. Were you were you ever starstruck when working at Mammoth? Not just from the pro riders, but all the A-list cat operators and the outdoor operations folks you got to work with. He says, I grew up with an old Mammoth ad hanging on my wall with Julian's name on it and Mike Gershner. And he said, when you hired me when I was 17 and my locker was in the Unbound office and it was right next to Gershner's, I was freaking out. I was way more starstruck and inspired to be around those guys like Columbo, Zajac, Ganley, TJ, etc., than any pro that was in town. And he says, I was wondering if you had a similar experience at any point.
Wow, yeah, great question. And it's funny you bring up those ads. That was a early ad campaign that I created. By the way, all of these campaigns that I did at Mammoth was with one guy named Mark Powell, who's still a great friend of mine and who's the creative director at Incepio and Incase, and I still work with him to this day. We work on projects now. I'm working with him as a producer, but so he was the creative for all of our advertising back then, and it was a thought that I had where there was a pro rider in all these ads, but I thought of the crew as huge stars as well. And so yeah, we added in our staff into these ads, which back then was pretty, I guess, unheard of. And so yeah, Danny Rossi had an ad, and Mike Gershner and Julian and all these guys. I never put myself in an ad. I was kind of anti that. But so yeah, that's cool that he thought of that. Bringing up some of these names of guys that I got to work with that were amazing, and like I can't kind of emphasize enough. Like I had such a amazing like crew of guys around me. Like to be honest, I wasn't ever the best cap builder in the world. I was pretty good, but I had these guys, like especially those early years in the pipe with Danny Rossier and Henley and Mike Gershner, like I said, for my entire time at Mammoth was like my right hand guy and was such an incredibly talented builder and then later on with guys like Pete Columbo and obviously like Cooper and and even in the day crew, like those first few years, and he's still one of my best friends, Julian LaCour, who's now a firefighter up in Tahoe. Just like running stuff and just like making things happen. And Chris Zajac, and later on, Michael Gregory came to work in the park with us, and TJ. And, yeah, I mean, there's so many names to name, but honestly, the reason it was successful was because of this team that we'd kind of like assembled and over the years, and I was so lucky to have these guys around me.
Jordan has he's got a bonus question actually.
Oh.
His question is, what was your reaction when you realized the Mammoth stickers one year looked like a stripper when you turned the sticker vertical?
That's really funny. You know what? I don't know if I ever really realized that until you just said that. So might have to grab a sticker and one of those stickers and see if that's the case. Well, thanks for pointing that out. I'm maybe glad that I didn't know that at the time.
And I don't think
So
it was probably the crown sticker. I think I know which sticker he's talking about. I've got some. I'm gonna go do the same.
yeah, I gotta look at that. Thanks for pointing it out, and I'm glad that nobody did at the time because it would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, totally.
Or maybe we did it on purpose. Maybe I should just claim it.
You can claim it
Right?
if you want to.
That was our little joke.
Yeah,
No, honestly, I don't remember ever knowing that. So I'll have to check it out.
that's awesome. All right, well, Jordan, Oren's gonna check it out.
Yeah, I tell you what, Jordan and Trevor and their whole family, great friends and was so cool. They were another, Jordan and his brother were these young, just rippers um, in Mammoth, and so cool to still be in touch with those guys over all these years.
Super cool. Yeah, I was humbled that everybody reached out and had some awesome push road questions. Again, I mean, we see a lot, and so I've had a couple messages of how come mine didn't make the show, etc. And just we try to be fair to everybody that comes on, and we pick 4 to 5. And if yours didn't make this show, we'll work towards making it happen the next show. So, Oren, thanks for being a part of the push road questions of the day.
Thank you.
The push row question of the day.
I'm gonna audible here, and I'm gonna hit you with this question because yes, you mentioned you're from Canada, so Canadians, whether you deem yourself as Canadian or French Canadian, I mean, those folks have made some incredible contributions to the snow industry, whether it's been operations, marketing, etc. But to date on the show, we've had some pretty incredible people like Steve Petrie, Isabel Filardo on the show, and we've gone, down some rabbit holes with those people about what the industry is now and how you can contribute these days. But you've taken, as you've mentioned already before, and we've talked about WCI, we've talked about crazy things with friends happening on the snow, but you've gone well beyond what operations are on snow within kind of an action sports community. That you've cultivated a bit of a brand name for yourself. But, within all those opportunities to produce massive athlete marketing campaigns for brands, events, etc., my thought process immediately goes to whether or not that was kind of always your goal. Because as I mentioned before, and we kind of unpacked that director job title, as you said before, it's not something that happened overnight. So it may have taken time, but did it morph into what you are doing now, or did you see yourself kind of gravitating towards more of that production thing like you mentioned?
No, it's funny. I didn't. It's kind of evolved over time, and like a lot of people in my late teens and early 20s, I wasn't even sure what I was doing with my life, and I just knew I loved snowboarding and the mountains, and I remember I worked at Mountain High right before Mammoth, and had like some sort of an encounter with the guy who ran the grooming department and ended up in HR. And I remember telling the HR lady, I'll never forget this. I told her, I was like, I'm a snowboarder before I'm an employee. And I told her that back then. And that's kind of been like, that's been my, like I've been so passionate about snowboarding. So I knew I wanted to kind of be in kind of like the snow world. But no, I had no clue of what I was going to be doing with my life back then. And even in Mammoth, like it kind of, like I said, it just evolved and kept changing, and all this stuff that I've been able to accomplish kind of like post Mammoth with these brands and nowadays on the projects that I get to work on. No, it wasn't like it wasn't back then. I didn't necessarily think of that. I knew that I was really good at operations. I was really and I tell people this all the time. I was really an operator that was good at marketing, not a marketing person that was involved in operations. And so it was like, yeah, it's important for me. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to like get in the trenches. And that was kind of what always pushed me in a certain direction with marketing. It wasn't like, and of course nowadays, like marketers, there's a lot more tools that they can use and different, analytics and data and that, a lot of that didn't exist back then. And it was just important to me to just kind of like open up my ears and eyes and listen and see what people are telling you. Your consumer will tell you exactly what you want. You just got to give it to them. And so I really enjoyed the marketing side of it and being creative there. But no, I had no idea that that's the way that my career would go back then.
Yeah, because people see folks at the top and they go, "Oh man, that's got to be just marvelous being there at that job." But when you're at the top, I think there can be some strings that you don't really have the ability to pull. I think there can be some folks that are really more of a voice than you are when you're at the top like that. You've got to kind of adhere to whatever maybe the corporate policy is. There's language and leverage maybe you don't have. I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
when you,
Well, and I've never been great at that.
yeah.
That's
But,
the
what, really? I don't know,
yeah.
man, but elaborate.
Well, and like I said, I had such a champion in Pam Murphy in those early years of kind of helping me get through that. And I think it has a lot to do with my success at Mammoth, because no, I wasn't great at that. Like I was, the corporate stuff wasn't my forte, and there's people out there that are great at it. Just wasn't me. And so, yeah, like after leaving Mammoth and having some of these other jobs outside of like the small kind of like mountain town, yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener, right? Like being at some big companies, Quicksilver, Red Bull, Volcom, where, yeah, you don't get to make, even if you're global director of marketing or anything, you're not, you got people telling you what needs to happen, and you end up spending a lot of your times like in meetings and coming up with concepts, but not always, building them all the way through, and you know building budgets and rebuilding budgets and cutting budgets, and that was the part of the stuff that just wasn't like, I just wanted to go do cool shit.
Do you think that you're probably more conversational? How do I put this? Do you think that your language and your ability to create ideas starts first and foremost with the writer? That's your person. Those are your people. That's who you can speak to and push things forward with easier than you can, say, corporate entities.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
Like, because you mentioned like
nowadays.
snowboarder first, right, before employee, and so like that's pretty
Yeah,
core.
yeah. I've that was 20 something years ago, so I've definitely learned that
Yeah.
HR departments don't appreciate that. Um, but yeah, yeah, and all of these projects that I work on, or a lot of these projects these days, they really start with a vision from an athlete. I think I'm in a unique place because I have that operational background, and
Yeah.
I also have the a good understanding of what types of things are important to athletes and what aren't, so I can help. um these guys are like, their minds work differently than ours, or mine, I should say, right? I mean, they're able to do these incredible feats because they see things differently. So what I've been able to do over the years is to kind of take these guys' vision and create it, and it's like a collaborative thing. It's not like I'm not showing up and being like, here's what you get. This is your jump, this is your rail, this is your feature, this is your course. Have at it. I've been able to, kind of come up with some basic ideas, and then the athletes are the ones that are really like driving the creativity, and I'm able to kind of take their, it's like macro vision that they might have, and hone it in on something that works for them, for spectators, for ROI, whatever the end result is, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes the hardest thing is that patience piece, where the idea that, just like you mentioned too, the idea is there, the selling of the idea is there. You're pushing things forward, and maybe it doesn't work out, or maybe it doesn't get the green light for some sort of budgetary reason, or maybe the writer backs out, or whatever the rationale is. But here's a good one, man. What would you say to somebody who's maybe going through that same thought process right now and interested in pursuing a career further than just park operations? To be able to be either on that production side or jump into the marketing world.
Yeah, it was a bit of it's funny because, I get up to this nice title at Mammoth, like, director, youth action sports marketing, and I have all these connections. And I remember actually Red Bull asking me in around 2010 if I would go work over there. They had an athlete manager position available. And I remember telling him at the time, like, well, that's that's a manager position, and I'm a director. Like, come, let me know when the director position's available. Like,
Holy shit!
like
Nice.
that's what would take to get me out of Mammoth.
Yeah.
And what's funny is it was like a bit of an eye opener that for me to get started in that. I mean, like I said, being in the right place at the right time, having these relationships, bit of luck, hard work ethics, it all contributed to it. But I finally, when I did decide to leave Mammoth, there was a brand manager position at Quicksilver available, and I remember going there, and I'd had a long-term relationship with those guys through park sponsorships at Mammoth, and so I knew a lot of people over there already, and so it kind of worked out. But to me, before I took the leap, I didn't understand. I thought it was like a step down.
Mm.
Mostly because of the title, I guess. I don't know, but to understand that in order to get started, and it took me going through this process, like, how did I even get started in this whole thing? I volunteered every single day off I had as a lift operator to go work with the park crew. Like, it's sometimes like you just got to get in there, and maybe it's a brand that you love, or maybe it's some of the brands I've worked for, Quicksilver, Red Bull, Volcom. Like, you want to get in there and be the marketing manager, but maybe there's like a position with the local rep, or you know what I mean? It's just like getting in there and working hard, and taking like these, what might be perceived as a slightly like lower position, but it's got this like high trajectory, right?
Mm.
Like, if you work hard and excel, then kind of the sky's the limit. So that was kind of how I was able to kind of move over, was coming to the realization and take some of those skills that I'd built kind of at Mammoth.
And I mean, it's interesting enough too, because here you are and you've created your own brand, your own company. And people can do that nowadays with social media. They can create a website. You don't even need a website. Maybe you just want a landing page for a website. You can get your name out there relatively easy. It really then becomes kind of like what we've discussed a lot already, is the selling of it and how you get people to realize that you are a reputable individual, and that, spending your time with that company or that brand is worth it. Maybe there's a in-kind exchange or trade that has to happen, but people can get their names out there and their reputations rather quickly.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's amazing to me that it's just so cool. There is a back end. I mean, sometimes there's maybe a pay to play aspect of it. If you're trying to promote, obviously there's dollars involved, that all circles around and has to get funneled somewhere in order for something to move forward. But the overall, I think there's still a very huge interest in people wanting to be a part of a bigger voice within, maybe a brand or a resort, and how that brand or that resort gets pushed forward out there. But I love what you just said there. It's not necessarily the job title that you should be chasing; it's the opportunity. I think that's kind of what I took away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you just said it way better than I did. That's that's exactly right, though. Like, if that's kind of that path that you're like interested in, or pursuing more, it's funny, like working at a brand. I was at Red Bull for a few years, and they have such this incredible program where they have these student brand managers that start working for the brand while they're in college. And some of the biggest people in the company have come up from being a student brand manager, right? So it's like, it's about getting your foot in the door, helping out wherever you can, whether it's locally, like in your local kind of tread community, or with the reps in your area, or running contests at your resort, and it can be any of that stuff. Because I'll tell you, when these positions come available at these brands, there's like sometimes like a place like Red Bull, there's like 1,000 or more applications, so it's like how do you get pushed to the front of that line? It's by knowing those people.
Ooh,
I guess that's what
yeah. See, that tidbit of information, I mean, that's something that I think people are experiencing right now too within this job market. Because, yes, are there opportunities out there that you can go and apply for? Absolutely. But you're at least, even if you get your application first, that application may be at the bottom of the pile. So how do you get noticed? How do you stand out? How do you be somebody that can get your foot in the door? And I think that nowadays, I think it's very much who you know and sometimes not necessarily what you know, just to get that opportunity to happen for you. And I think that comes from what you were just discussing. Just, put yourself out there. Go say hi. Don't be afraid. People are people. They can be approachable. Worst thing they can say is, get out of my face. But
I mean, I can't tell you how many people that we hired in the park or in my career kind of after Mammoth and in these other roles that I was, that were just like persistent, that were just around, whether it was filmers, photographers, whether it was guys like cat operators. These were the guys that were like mainline groomers that any chance they had where we were doing these special builds would come and help us and wouldn't come. They were just the hardworking guys, and that's who you notice. Like myself as a hiring manager, like when I had positions, those were the people that I was looking to.
Yeah. What do you think too? I was gonna say, with all those things you've done, whether it was getting noticed or working on a project or the different brands you've worked for in the past, success does not come without failure or trying. And beyond kind of coming up with the idea, what was one project that maybe got executed or went forward into production that was either a flop or it didn't go as well as you thought was going to go? I mean, do you got anything like that? Because I think that's where, so many people look at you as somebody that's got all your shit together, and you definitely put together an amazing package, because you've produced all these amazing events and you've done all these things for brands. But do you have a failure story at all of a project or a thing in life?
Yes. Well,
It's a deep one, I know. Sorry. You're like, damn it, Parker.
I have. What's funny is I don't. This is one of these, saying these Rusty Gregory isms. In our department head meetings, he used to say, "Make a plan, work a plan, and then adjust to reality."
Ooh.
So I think there's a lot of things that could have really gone horrible. Whether it's because of some oversight in planning or weather or whatever the circumstance was. But being able to kind of like calmly bring a team together and say, okay, we got to figure this out, and let's make this happen. I can't think of like a specific, things over the years. I remember doing this snowmobile demo at Main Lodge with Red Bull back in years ago, and it was right when they were starting to do backflips, and the snowmobile went to do a backflip, and he made it halfway and didn't make it any further. And so that was kind of the end of the show.
Well,
so
that's kind of the end of the show.
Like
Yeah.
that was so there's for sure circumstances of things that have kind of happened over the years. But I think that the strength of myself, and I can't take the credit for this. I mean, I've always been surrounded by some pretty incredible people. So
yeah,
really the strength has been being able to like call these audibles in the moment and like not just salvage, but make these things successful. So, I'm sure if I really thought about it, I could think of some things over the years that didn't go perfectly to plan. But let's put it this way: thinking back over my entire career, it's hard to think of something. So I don't know. Maybe after this airs, somebody can give me a call and remind me of a story where we really screwed up, because I can guarantee you they're out there. I just can't think of one right now.
Well, hey, I think you admitted to one of the very first question on the show, and that was Travis Rice's jump. I mean, hey, whatever. 112-foot rodeo, done. But it was meant to be something else. I think that quote right there that you just put out there. What was it from Rusty? Say that again.
Yeah, you make a plan, you work your plan, and adjust to reality.
There it is.
So, that's been that's stuck with me for a lot of years. He's got a few other really good quotes, but
Those are all copyrighted.
yeah. Be careful. Thanks, Rusty.
All right. Well, I have another special guest question for you, and it's definitely from another person you know. It's somebody that you've spent a bunch of time around. I think at one point in time you had promoted him to rail boss or head rail fabricator or something like that. He's been a guest on the show. It's Jeremy Cooper. So I will play. He's got a two-parter for you. I'll play part one for you right now.
Okay.
Parker, Blade Divers, what's going on? Oren, you've been a part of so many rad projects from your time at Mammoth, Quicksilver, Volcom, Red Bull, and now out on your own. Which project are you most proud of and why?
Wow. Thanks for that. That's a tough one. I've had a few things that I've done recently that I'm like really pumped on. I mean, even just a few months ago, worked on this produced this project out in Kansas, in rural Kansas, called Red Bull Imagination freestyle motocross thing, which was pretty cool. I think when I was working at I have, it's funny because I can think of projects from each of those places. When I was at Red Bull, I produced or was the lead on this thing called Red Bull Cluj, which ended up with something around 35 million views, and it was this Rube Goldberg machine that we built with athletes, and that was probably one of the most complex things that I've ever worked on. So I take a lot of pride in that. At Volcom, working with Pat Moore and the rest of the team on Mr. Plant was definitely a highlight. At Quicksilver, like I said, I got there and I got to work on the Art of Flight. I got to go on a couple of shoots with Travis and the crew. We were in at Buttermilk, which was incredible, doing a park shoot, and I got to go to Revelstoke with him and Nicholas Mueller and Helly around, and that was like an incredible experience. And then at Mammoth, I mean, gosh, there were so many of these. Probably one of the things that has become something that I'm the most, proud of with Mammoth is that we had a contest back in the early 2000s called the Fiesta de la Pipa.
I remember that. That was a really cool contest. Yeah, the pinatas hanging over the coping. Yeah.
Yeah, we put all the jibs and all the stuff on the edge of the pipe, and so as we were developing the artwork for it, like I said, I was a marketing guy. I wasn't a graphic designer, but there's this South African guy that worked in our marketing department, graphic designer, and we're developing the poster for this, and we came up with the Mammoth Crown logo.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And so like literally, it's funny because in the whole Crown logo, at least I wasn't the artist, but I was the one who was like, yep, that's what we're doing. We at the time, and sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but
no, send it, man.
at the time, there was only a handful of resorts in that time that were really concentrating on parks, and it was the Southern California resorts, Whistler, Breck, Mammoth. There wasn't really a lot, Keystone a bit, but everybody had their own color of rail, right?
I
So
remember
at the
that.
time,
Yeah.
So Snow Summit was green and Whistler was red and Mammoth was blue when I got there. And so at one point there was like this trend where all these resorts they're like paying graffiti artists, they're doing all this stuff and spending all this money on their rails. And that's when I kind of decided we're just painting everything like as bright a pink as we could find at the paint store. We painted everything pink, just like full punk rock, like screw everybody. And the thing with this Mammoth logo is that we would just spray paint it by ourselves. No stencil, no nothing. We just like go and tag up these rails. And so we kind of like started this in the parks. Like I said, I think it was around 2003 or 2004. And then for years we just used it in the parks. And then Mammoth was going through all these different rebranding exercises and spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars with all of these companies to try to come up with these new logos and brands. And anyways, we kind of had this crown logo that we were using. And then they brought in this CMO to Mammoth, and he went through his process and came up with another new logo. And then I had this crown logo, and he was like, "Nope, you can't use it." And we're like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's for the park." And he goes, "Well, we need to be consistent across the board." So we were like battled, and finally we kind of came to like some sort of a compromise. And anyways, that guy ended up leaving. Well, I think it was so this is right like in 2010 when I left working at Mammoth. We were still kind of in this battle over utilizing this crown logo. And they brought in a new CMO. And the first thing he said was, "What are you guys doing? Like, you drive around Southern California or Los Angeles, like every single car has a crown logo in the back. Nobody has this other corporate logo. Like that, the crown logo is your brand. That is like," and he made the change. And when you go to Mammoth now, it's on the side of the building. It's on every gondola. It's on every cup. It's on everything.
Yeah.
So it became the logo for Mammoth. So I know it's, I don't know if that's exactly what Cooper was getting after, but literally kind of like leaving my mark on that resort. And I take a lot of pride in that, and helping to develop that and create the Mammoth logo and brand.
I still got a bunch of those die cuts. I got a shoebox filled with old stickers. It's actually right up there, just above my head. But yeah, no, seriously, it's like I Ride Park City stickers, Mammoth stickers, June stickers. Yeah, I've still got a bunch of those crown die cuts, all the different colors too. I think that's exactly what he was kind of getting at, man. I do. He does have a 2-part question, so I'm going to play that for you right now. Here we go.
Okay, perfect.
Oren, you just chose your favorite project that you were most proud of. How does that compare to the time you opened up a copy of Transworld and saw that Mountain High was running an ad featuring you riding their pipe? How cool was that? And did you receive any photo incentive money for doing so?
That's a funny one. Yeah, actually, I worked at Mountain High at the time, and we haven't really even touched on that, but I went from Bear, and Mountain High is where I learned how to drive cats. And kind of a funny story around that. Maybe we'll get to, but so yeah, we were shooting this ad, and that's probably when I thought I would be a pro snowboarder back in the day. And it's funny. I tell people all the time. So it was whatever, an 8-foot half pipe, and I was probably 8 foot out of the pipe. Like, I mean, it's legit. And there was like a person on the deck with like a charcoal barbecue flipping a burger. And so yeah, it's probably like 8 foot out of the pipe. I was really pumped with that. The problem is that, so then that was an 8-foot pipe, and I was 8 foot out, so I was about 16 foot up. So then super pipes came along. I could, just make it to barely the coping and to the lip. And then now that they're 22-foot pipes, I'm about 3 or 4 feet below the lip. So I stayed at the same level, which when the pipes were 8 foot, was pretty impressive. Nowadays, yeah, it's pretty weak. But yeah, I think that was my only ad ever as a snowboarder. But I've got it framed somewhere in a box in my garage, so I still have that thing. So yeah,
You should.
thanks for that, Cooper.
That was sick. You should send me a photo of that. Cooper was like, I think he has a blow up, or he's got it printed somewhere.
In my condo in Mammoth, I do. It's not from. I think it's probably from the same shoot, but I have a friend of mine made it for me. I'm on this world board, and yeah, so I've got a big in my condo. I do have a big picture. I got kind of snowboard pictures all around. This hip we built for Hikey Source, just going massive on it. And I've got some other photos blown up in my house, and then yeah, I've got this photo of myself. So
now, did you receive any photo incentive money for that?
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Cooper. Yep, no, didn't get anything. And actually, I think I left Mountain High pretty soon after that, and moved over to Mammoth. But man, I'll tell you, Cooper's been not just like a industry guy or friend, but a really close friend of mine over the years. And yeah, when he came over to Mammoth, And he was one of those guys. I think he worked as a mainline groomer for the first little while and came and worked on some projects with us and was like immediately one of the best. And he had all these skills. And you were talking about Rail Boss, like, my early years, it was basically me in the summers. And, I'd go fix the stereo equipment out in the park. And I was the one building and painting the rails. Like I'd get a helper for a week or two, but I was kind of self-taught welder and build the stuff. And, most of the time they'd stay together and sometimes they'd just kind of fall apart because I wasn't very good at it. And then Cooper shows up and he's like this badass rail builder and knows how to weld and really incredible operator and just like a really good dude. And so yeah, he came over and then, pretty soon after he was the choice to go. There was a short time when I was kind of overseeing both Mammoth and June and kind of between Eric Rosenwald and then the job came up and there was nobody better for the job than Cooper, and he just took it to a whole different level over there. And we've stayed friends all these years and stoked to hear his voice.
He brought up Mountain High, but sometimes we go in chronological order, sometimes we don't, but I mean, that's the Blade Dive. So backing up, just so everybody else can kind of digest and understand the transition from Bear to Mountain High, and then we've kind of already unpacked a bunch about Mammoth, but you went from Bear to Mountain High, but were you the manager at Mountain High, and how did you leave Mountain High? Because I hear there's kind of a funny story behind that. If you want to unpack it, you can. If you don't, you don't have to.
Yeah. No, so after that first year at Bear, where I kind of got hired on to the park, I went back for another season, and I was working, like I said, the park manager was this guy named Keith Pfahler, who same thing. I'm still in touch with him to this day. We keep in touch. So it's him and another guy, Shane Smart. That was kind of like his right hand guy. And back then at Bear, it was like Mike Gershner worked there, who was my right hand for every year I was at Mammoth, and we had this pretty incredible team there. But so after that second year at Bear, I actually went to go work at World Industries for a short time, not quite a year, in the sales department. And it was a job. It was fine. It was nothing special, nothing horrible. It was a cool brand at the time. And Keith called me up and asked me if I wanted to learn how to drive snowcats, and that he had he and Shane were hired to go build the parks over at Mountain High. And they so I was like, heck yeah. So I moved to Wrightwood and started working there, and I did about a week of training, I guess you'd call it. Like I would groom these are my first times of driving a cat, and the first half of my shift I'd just go groom the little beginner areas, and then they kind of had me go up into the park and kind of work up there. And I mean, back, not doesn't have a whole lot of snow, so we're figuring it out as we went and getting creative. And more than anything, we'd have to scrape the snow from the sides of the run back to the middle of the run just to have some snow to even work with. But it was about a week or two into this new job that I had, just learning how to drive cats, and Keith was so frustrated that he ended up quitting, and then Shane was there, and they might have quitted. They might have quit at the same time.
Quidditch, kind of like Harry Potter.
Quidditch. Exactly.
Yeah, man.
They quit at the same time. They just were like, forget this, we're out of here. And there was one other guy that was kind of like already like a pretty established cat operator. And one night he came on the radio, and like I said, I've been doing this for about a week or two, and he goes, explicit, whatever, explicit. I don't want to use the exact word, but
sent it vocabulary wise, 4 letters and all.
Sent it. I'm effing out of here, like over the radio. It was really funny.
Wow.
And said, I'm out of here, and he like drove his cat to the bottom and quit. and there I was, last man standing, and so all of a sudden I was park manager.
That's how you got. That's how you got the gig.
That's how I became the park manager. Now, of course, like at the time. Like I spent already a couple of years digging, and I was in a cat, so it was just like a big shovel for me. So I was doing pretty well, but no, it was not it was kind of like that. And so yeah, I became a park manager and was there for a couple of years, or just under 2 years. And yeah, it was a tricky. I mean, in some ways they were doing some really incredible things, and in other ways it was a bit of a tricky resort to work with. Just and they've done such a good job with not a lot of snow, and but very close proximity to LA. I mean, it's only like a couple hours from LA, so
Yeah, super short drive from LA.
it's really short. It's actually closer than Bear or Summit.
Yeah, just right off the highway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you're driving between like LA and Vegas, and you take a left, and
Boom.
there's Mountain High.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there off the 15. So, but yeah, I in my time there, I started. I got connected in with this company. They were out of Canada. It was like a production company called Peak Productions. I don't even know if they're around anymore.
Peak production.
But yeah, and so I was traveling around, and this is in the kind of late 90s, and border cross was kind of like the future of snowboarding at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was traveling around with these guys. Like I'd go back home to Mountain High and work, and then I was building all these border cross courses we did like, at the time it was now it's like the Telus Ski and Snowboard Festival at Whistler, and we built the Big Air and the border cross there.
Now, did you do that with Keith?
Keith was working with them as well at the time, yeah. And then so yeah, it was the Sims Invitational back in those earlier days. We were doing the Swatch Bordercross Tour and all these types of things. And so then this company got hired as the builders for the Gravity Games, the first Winter Gravity Games, which was kind of like NBC's like rebuttal to X Games. But so the Gravity Games were in Mammoth, and so I went up there. And anybody that remembers that, so this is in 2000, I guess. Massive snowstorm, like huge. And so I'm like this guy that's used to scraping the edges of the runs at Mount High to get some snow to just make a little mound. And I remember being parked in a snowcat at the top of Fascination, which is one of the race runs at Mammoth, and I couldn't even get past there because it was all avalanche closure. And I was like, I didn't even know what an avalanche closure was. Like, I was like, this is incredible. Like, look how much snow there is. Like, you need to build something, you just dig down, and it was like endless amounts of snow. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, this is the place for me. Like, and yeah, I think something happened in Mount High. I think I kind of left and kind of gave him the peace sign and said, hey, I'm getting out of here.
The peace sign minus the pointer finger?
Yeah, it was yeah, no hard feelings, and obviously it was a integral part in my step ladder to what I got to. But yeah, so I called up Chevet, and I said Mike Gershner, who I'd been working with at Bear Mountain, had already moved up to Mammoth, and I had such a great experience up there. And I called Chevet, and I was like, hey, I'd love to come work there. And he goes, well, we don't, can't make you a manager or anything, but we put you in a snowcat, and can pay you $9 an hour. And I said, sign me up. And I remember my whole life fit into my like Toyota Tacoma pickup. And I drove to Mammoth and found a room to rent and moved there on my birthday.
Damn.
In 2001.
Damn.
March 2001. And that night was like a Pennywise concert or something in Mammoth. There was some crazy concert at Canyon Lodge, and I was like, this place is pretty cool. I think I'm going to like it here.
I think everybody said that about me. I know I did. It was like, holy cow, like we got DJ Khaled up in there. What's going on with this place?
Yeah.
Dude.
No, so that's kind of how I kind of bridged that between, and learn how to drive cats at Mount High.
That would be tough, dude. That would be tough, especially back then.
Yeah, and it's funny is we were like in the mid 90s and late 90s into the early 2000s. There wasn't really standards, right? I mean, we were figuring a lot of stuff out as we were going along, and back then, and these park guys, the day crew, they were the testers, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because that role, obviously, like, and the day crew is so important, and their role has become so much more important these days, with the type of work that they're putting in. But literally, like, the one of, like, the main parts of the job of the day crew was to, like, we'd build the stuff and they would try it.
Yeah.
Like, they were incredible snowboarders. I mean, these guys were so good, and like I said, they're hitting this stuff before the general public to, like, test it. Like, they're putting their bodies on the line, and that was, like, a pretty important part. Nowadays, obviously, like, these cat operators are so good these days, and the parks are so good, and I know that's part of their job, but back then it was more kind of life and death. Like, okay, guys, go try it out, see if it works.
So we talked earlier about kind of ideation and selling the ideas and your transition from machines to manager to director to working with brands, being a part of some significant brands, being at the top, realizing that maybe you didn't want to be there, and then reinventing yourself. But I feel like, and this is definitely just my personal opinion, and weigh in how you want to, but sometimes in an industry that's either competitive or not, ideas are really the thing that can be the separator. And whether or not one idea is better than the other, or who comes up with said better idea, sometimes that origination can be pretty much a catapult or a career launch, whatever we want to term it. But did you ever feel like that you needed to come up with that next best thing in order to stay successful in the industry that you're currently in?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it, for sure. At Mammoth, it was so in the earlier days, like I said, there was only a handful of resorts, so we were trying to, like, outdo each other. As the years were going by, there's more and more of these resorts taking notice of what we were doing, and some of these other resorts, and how successful we were, and the amount of coverage and media, that we were getting out of all of this, that people were kind of like catching up. And so, yeah, it became really competitive, especially at Mammoth. Each summer was like, well, what's our list? Like, what are we going to do next year to kind of one up what we were able to accomplish this year? And like I said, I think that a lot of it was like a collaboration from people and ideas. And I guess just it would get to me, and we would kind of pick, whether it was like specific features or we did some pretty big expansions of the park while I was there, taking over runs, like nowadays people go to Mammoth and they ride the park on Forest Trail, and it's just always been there. But it wasn't always there, right? That was a run that a lot of, local, like hardcore local Mammoth people would go down. And when we took that over, there was some pushback. So yeah, it was like, it was very competitive, and became more and more competitive, and coming up with whatever that next idea was. And at Mammoth, and then of course, yeah, after that, I'd say Red Bull was where I was coming up with the craziest, ideas, and bringing those to fruition, because we had this one product, this can of Red Bull, that we're marketing through athletes. And so I got to do some of the, like, the coolest projects, from surfing on boards from every different decade, over in French Polynesia, to that Red Bull Cluj project I was talking about, that athlete machine, that Rube Goldberg machine. But yeah, all of these ideas were coming. I would pitch these ideas, right? Like, every year I'd come up with a handful of ideas, and we did a ton of that stuff, like I said, at Mammoth. I mean, stuff that had never been done before. We did this, pretty famous, shoot with grenade, this eyeball jump, and we painted this giant eyeball on it. Or, did this Red Bull, I think it was called Above the World, where we used this 3D projection on the features and made it look like the jumps were hollow. And so, yeah, I mean, it was always kind of like, that was a huge part of it, coming up with these ideas. And then, but I don't want to say it's easy to come up with ideas, because it's not, and good ideas, but then, like, to figure out how to, like, you sell in these crazy ideas, and then the bosses are like, "Yep, let's do it." And then next thing you know, you've got to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, and making it happen too. Like it's a I've always looked at coming up with the next best thing is kind of like a sprint, and maybe that's where my downfall is. I feel like the people who come up with these marvelous ideas, I have always envisioned them as marathon runners because they sit. In my head, I have it pictured as, you know, like I keep a notebook or a little journal. So like anything that I come across that might be something that's either interesting to discuss on the podcast, or maybe a question that I want to ask a guest, or how do I kind of skirt a specific topic with someone, or do I just send it and say, "What the fuck happened here? Tell me about that." Versus where I feel like all kinds of people do the ideation process differently. And so my version of kind of doing the marathon thing with writing things down and piecing it together in my head and then going back to it, some people are probably really great at just boom, here's my thought. I didn't even have to sleep on it, didn't even write it down, type it, and then here it is, Mr. Whoever I'm pitching to, it's there, right there. Everything out there is in front of you. I got all the connects. I can make it happen. Done. And maybe that's like the Hollywood version of me depicting of what's possible for an idea, but I know that imposter syndrome is making me feel that way. But it's so cool. It is. It's just cool to know that there are revelations that can happen on the daily basis, whether it's yourself or whether it's somebody else, or whether it's me or Joe Blow or Mary Sue or Billy Bob or whoever it is. That comes up with the next idea. But it's always been fascinating to me to see how each idea gets noticed and how it's brought to the table. I guess that's me getting to my point, laying the plane with a question. Did you ever feel that way? Like getting a seat at the table to present the idea, no matter how successful you thought your idea was going to be, that pitching piece of getting the opportunity to be at that table, was that ever difficult, or did that come kind of naturally, like that presentation, confidence, public speaking, all of that? Was that just kind of ingrained in you?
No, it was, and it's different at different points in my career. At Mammoth, we really had, I don't want to say free reign because I don't want to, but we had a lot of trust from the leadership team there to make a lot of these ideas and come up with these. And we would work with brands and kind of like develop them together. So it was a little bit different there, right? Like at each of these places, all of these different kind of creative outlets and ideas kind of came about differently and had to be sold in and and worked through differently. Red Bull, like I said, was kind of a bit of an outlier because we would kind of come up with, I don't know, pretty nuts stuff, and and they'd be like, yeah, let's do it. So it's a
Wow.
little bit, it's a little different there. um but yeah, I'd say, like, and I said it earlier on in our conversation, but it's really was like I would I would take all of this input, and like you said, I would store it too, but more in my head. And so I wasn't really like, a lot of the ideas were just taking stuff that was out there and putting it together and kind of getting it to the right people. And I guess that was an area I was really good at, was kind of these connecting these dots, right? Whether it was, that the bit of that jack of all trades and master of none. Like I knew a lot of people that I could tap into for different things. But Red Bull was such a cool place when it came to all of that. And yeah, we had a few of those projects, and that's the fun part, right? Is like, how do you actually like take this from a deck and a couple of slides with this like concept with like some sort of like hand drawn sketch to like actually making happen.
So there's all kinds of little stuff that as you talk to people and just kind of as you've mentioned and just mentioned there, as you pitch, as you discussed, how does it evolve and where does it go and how do you execute on all that stuff? But for a brand like
Well,
that would have been awesome.
the idea is that people, consumers, guests, clients, whatever it is, they're going to tell you exactly what they want. It's it's just whether you open up your ears and listen, and then help to like give it to them. And I'm not saying they're going to tell you exactly I want to jump here, or I want, but as far as what you're putting in your advertisements, what you're using on your social media, what you're doing, all of these different things that make up the whole, universe of this world, people are going to tell you, like, if they like something or they don't like something. And if you can push your ego aside and listen, then if you just deliver people what they're asking for, you're going to be pretty successful.
Yeah, I agree. Here's one that I really wanted to ask you and get you to weigh in on too, which is where we are, current industry status. I think things have come a long way since when you first started, and everybody else, and a lot of other folks that have been on the show too. But one thing specifically that I wanted to cover with you was, concepts and pitching and selling ideas and production and execute all of that stuff. But, you know, first of all, do you think the snow industry, or if we want to encompass action sports, can be a little bit too cool and claims to be maybe inclusive, but truly exclusively? And this is just relating to years past. And if so, maybe what do you think the next big idea is so that we can make the industry more inclusive and accessible?
Well, I'll just speak for myself, and I mean, I don't necessarily have that exact same kind of feeling on it. And it's interesting because now I'm a dad, and now I go to the mountains with my kids, so I see the resorts and these mountains in a whole different kind of light nowadays.
Mm.
Uh, so, um, so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was cool, right? I mean, it was for when I got into, like I said, skateboarding and snowboarding in the late 80s and then early 90s. Like, it's what us kids did because we didn't want to just be on a team, soccer team or football team. Like, it was a way for us to be able to go express ourselves individually, and there was no rules, and over the years, as it's become more and more popular, there's become more and more rules, right?
Mm.
And that's the nature of it. And the expansion of the sports, with all of the good that's come of that, which is, you know, great parks and resorts putting more money into it, and bigger prize purses, and professional snowboarders that are able to make these incredible careers, and have big impacts on consumers and people. And for all of that, there's of course the other side of it, which is that we are still, we're just snowboarders. We're out there doing it because we love the sport, and none of that stuff really mattered. So I don't know. It's a tough one because I think that it was like a paint your own picture sport. That's what got me into it, right? Like, I never wanted anybody to dictate how I was doing it. And so maybe that gets interpreted as a little bit exclusive, but I didn't really see it that way.
Well, I've got another special guest question for you. It is from Mr. Ryan Runke. Grateful he's contributed. I know he's a busy man. So, dude, super busy guy. But I will play it for you now. Here we go.
What's up, guys? Ryan Runke here. We've had a lot of fun adventures over the last 15 years. I guess I want to say, what are your 3 favorite moments from Art of Flight tour? So I think that's probably one of the most influential and interesting adventures we've ever been on.
Yeah. Well, so first off, thanks to Ryan. He's one of my best friends, and because he's like a brother to me, and so stoked that he was able to contribute. So thanks, Ryan. And we talked about that the short bus, the LMP shoot. I think that's when I met Ryan. So that was probably, I'd kind of heard of him before that. He was such a person in the industry that people knew, and a character that was around. But we've become such good friends, and so when I left Mammoth, like I said, I went to Quicksilver, and I was the snow brand manager, and I was kind of the Quicksilver side of Art of Flight, and helped kind of put together this giant tour in the U.S. It was funny when was talking to Ryan recently. He's like, I got to submit a question. He's like, I got to think about something that's not going to incriminate me too much. So I'll keep it on the PG level. But needless to say, that group of guys in a bus going around the country in Canada was a pretty incredible and memorable experience. So I'm gonna, almost like the that other story, I'm gonna save a little bit of this for people's imaginations. But let's just say it was pretty fun and wild. But how about I'll answer it this way so that I don't, like you said, incriminate Runke or anybody else. I'll tell you some of my favorite stops. We did the world premiere in New York City at the Beacon Theater. It's something like 3,500 people, and it was like mind blowing, like compared to anything else that I've been involved with. Like, it's a massive theater, 3,500 people. I think that's, and this was like Kurt Morgan, and so like everything about it was like the quality and the sound, and it's like the seats were shaking, and so yeah, that premiere was something I'll never forget. And just like the hoopla around the whole thing, media, and it was incredible. But I had a couple other like really amazing experiences on the West Coast, and going up to Vancouver, and my dad and my stepmom coming along and watching the movie, and going out to dinner with like Trav and John Jackson and all these people. And I think John is still my stepmom's favorite snowboarder, because she's like, what's the dreadlocked guy? So that was like a pretty special thing. But no, what a, like, geez, like I said, I got to be on a couple of the shoots up in Revelstoke and in Aspen, and just to be involved in that was, yeah, it was incredible. And then this team, it was like, these are some of my best friends now, between like the athletes, but then also it's like Ben Bryan, who was over at Red Bull Media House, and Steve Reska was running the tour. He came from Matchstick Productions and was like the tour kind of manager. And then there's me and Runke and our friend Clark Fines, who was the lead guide, and then was like, just came along on the tour with me for all of that time. So yeah, that was a really, really incredible career highlight and experience. And I remember being in Times Square. There was a Quicksilver store, and I kind of negotiated this deal to have the Art of Flight teaser playing on the Times Square like massive billboard, and being just standing there and looking up and seeing this, this thing, and how big it was and how far it was reaching was like a huge career highlight.
Super cool. Once again, you're the guy that knows how to avoid getting charged for the ice underneath the floor at Chicago.
Yeah, like barter system. I take from one person and take from somebody else and piece it together, and somehow I've been able to figure it out these years.
I do want to know one last question, and that is, where do you think the future of the snow industry is headed?
Wow, I mean, yeah, like I said, I experience it in such a different way now, as a guest up at Mammoth, as a consumer, getting my kids all their gear every year, and for myself, and how I enjoy the sport myself now, and this kind of like revitalization of snowboarding in my life that I think my kids have really brought to me. And I'm really lucky to be able to do some trips to places like Baldface every year, where I get that powder fix, and it's like the most incredible thing ever. And so yeah, like I said, I'm just like I'm really stoked. Like I said, I get to travel around to some resorts and to see what has been accomplished since I left Mammoth is like pretty incredible. So I'd say things are in a pretty good place. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, so I'm sure there's things that can always be better, but and like I if there's one thing that I've said throughout this conversation is and it's something that I truly believe is for people to really listen to their consumers, to their guests at the resorts, and don't deliver them a bunch of stuff that they don't want, but but listen to them and give them what they're going to ask you for. And I said, I'm lucky that I called Mammoth my home resort, and that they've done such a good job there over all these years. And it's really nice to snowboard around and not have to look at rope lines or fences and let other people pick that stuff up now. So I think it's going in a good direction. You know, resorts it's come a long way since I was getting started in the mid, and later 90s, and coming from that that risk manager at Bear that said we'd never have rails to like, this is like big business now. And it's nice that resorts are recognizing that and putting money and resources into these things and trusting their teams. And so, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how things are. But if anybody wants to hire Frankie Bird Inc., we're happy to consult and and help them out any further.
Send things in the right direction. Maybe they need to take it, right?
I'm happy to always help.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, Oren, this has been really a treat, and I can't express enough thanks just in the words I can piece together right now to tell you what it means for you to come on the Blade Dive and chop it up with me about all things you, Mammoth, where you've been, gone, done, conquered, and possibly bought t-shirts to prove it. But yeah, man, thank you.
I can't, like, even when you just asked me to be involved in this and to have those friends of mine submit that stuff, and I'm so humbled and like appreciative of everybody. And it's funny, I got a message. I posted a little thing on my story, doing this interview with you, and Charles Beckinsale, wrote to me, and we've crossed paths over all the years and have been friends, but haven't talked to him in a little while. And he was like, man, I'm really looking forward to listening to this. And I was like, wow, thanks. Like that means a lot. I mean, he's one of the best of the best out there, and at what he does. And that was really meant a lot for me. And then he said something about how I'm one of the OGs. And I thought to myself, well, that's not cool. I'm not that old. No, thanks so much, Parker. Thanks for everything you're doing and bringing these conversations out to people. And man, I can't thank you enough.
Huge shout out to Oren Tanzer for being this week's Blade Dive episode. It was a pleasure catching up with him, and gosh, there were some good stories that were told. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. I do have Corey Allen with me, and he's going to wrap up the episode by revisiting where people can apply for jobs at Sun Valley. So Corey, I'm going to hand it over to you right now. Let the people know.
It's really easy, sunvalley.com/jobs. And so if you scroll down to the mountain tab, you will see opportunities for terrain park groomer. And within that is just a simple application process. It'd be awesome if you could attach your resume. We are very proactive about reaching out to people. It would be less than 24 hours for you to get a reply from us. We're also looking for winch cat operators, experienced winch cat operators and experienced groomers for Dollar and for Bald Mountain as well. So sunvalley.com/jobs.
All right, you heard him. I'm going to make sure that link to that website is in the show notes, so you can find the show notes at anywhere you listen to your podcast. And you'll be able to click on that link, and it'll take you straight to where Corey would like for you to go. And you should be able to fill out an application and talk to Corey. Okay, it is fantastic to be back. I'm so grateful that everybody is tuned in and listening. And you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Please fill up your machine with diesel at the end of your shift.